Oh, boy, today is just not one of those days. One of those days of engineering excellence. This is Jeff, and she is Suzanne. Suzanne, good morning. Mark was unable to join us today, so I'm filling in for him. And as usual, because I'm doing my producer stuff, I'm in another world as well. So good morning, Suzanne. How are you doing? How are things in Wasatch Land? And how did you survive the storms last night? I know you had some wonderful storms going through last night.
Well, good morning, my friend. And you know, what wouldn't wake us up more than a gallon of coffee than the typical technological issues that seem to be so prevalent? You know, it's not just for us over here at the Cerberus Radio Network, where, by the way, we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. And yes, this is listed as the Mark and Suzanne show. We've got Jeff doing double duty as co-host and producer. Jeff, I don't know how you do it. You produce your own shows. You produce my show. You keep everything running smoothly at the network. You're the one that gets all the files updated and put on our YouTube account. We are on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, Cerberus Radio Network. We urge you to subscribe to that. We urge you to please share it. Tell your friends about it. We have not been doing any advertising. Jeff, I'm blown away by the response we are getting. People are listening. The number of unique listeners as well is just going through the roof. So we're doing something right. What we're being told is that people want to hear the stuff we're saying. I got a funny story for you. I think you heard the beginning yesterday. I was on K-Talk Radio. I appear as a co-host frequently on my good friend Paul Jensen's Inside the News show. And we discussed what we were going to review yesterday. It was a 2-hour show. We had a guest in the second half of the hour, so we knew what we're going to be doing of the show. And he starts off the show talking about Paul Manafort and the jury sequestration. And I just listening to him go on and on and on. And then he said, Suzanne, what are your thoughts on that? And I said, quite honestly, I have none. It is a dog and pony show. This is nothing more than a distraction. And if you're going to be focusing on this sort of a kangaroo court trial, when Hillary Clinton is running around free, when Eric Holder, who was held in contempt of Congress for Fast and Furious, no repercussions, Lerner using the IRS as a target, as a weapon of the Obama administration against conservative organizations seeking 501c3 status, and nothing's happening, I have no interest in this ridiculous case. So I'm sorry, I have no comment.
Yeah, Suzanne, I know you didn't intend going off on this, but this is actually relevant because I keep seeing, I posted on somebody's Facebook timeline, they had an article there about Obama's going to be indicted. It's coming down. And I said, no, it's not. Same thing I saw about 4 months ago, the same thing about Hillary. Oh, the indictment's coming. Trey Gowdy's going to get her, blah, blah, blah. And I posted on there, no, she's not going to be indicted. This is just political theater. And I was excoriated as a moron. Oh, yeah. Just watch and see. She's going to be indicted. Trey Gowdy's getting her this time. Trump's going to do it. He said he would. And I was an idiot. 4 months later, she's not indicted. I said the same thing on this one about Obama. They're not going to indict him. This is all political theater. It's red meat for the masses. It just makes you feel like, oh, they really care. They're really going to do something this time. Well, no, they're not.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't think of anything, but have there been any legal punitive repercussions from any investigation Trey Gowdy has conducted? He talks a great talk. I love to see him put these guys' feet to the fire. But other than people cheering him on, have we seen anything happen as a result? And it could have happened, and I just don't know. But is there anything that I'm missing?
No, you're not. And like I said, it's all political theater. It's all designed to make people think they really, really care. They're really going to do something this time. You watch and see. And months later, it'll still be the status quo. In the meantime, they'll continue spending. They'll continue the undeclared unconstitutional wars. They'll continue the destruction of our liberties. That's all that goes on. It gives them cover to do everything they're doing.
Yeah, who knows what they're doing behind the scenes? Everybody's so focused. And I just had this conversation with a friend of mine, and yeah, we're totally going off on a tangent here, but we're having a conversation. Then all of a sudden it turned to, oh, can you believe what Trump did? And this happens all the time. I hear this, oh, Trump. I'm mad at Trump. He did that. And I said, the problem is when you just you give this guy so much room in your head, you have no room for the stuff we talk about here. Folks, again, I tell people all the time, if you want to hear what's going on with Trump, what Trump's latest tweet was, what's going on with the with Jeff, while I'm doing this, can you please give Mark the call-in number? I don't know if we can make the call-in work, but he just had a medical appointment.
I'm texting him right now.
Okay. And so, yes, and to show that I'm not crazy, our good friend Andrew, I love that this guy listens. We have really, really smart listeners. He's saying, I feel exactly the same about the investigations and thought it was awesome when your answer was meh. Thank you so much, Andrew, because when I said that, when I'm on K-Talk, we've got about 250,000 live listeners. Okay. Then we go over to Red State Radio syndication where they replay it in the evening. This puts us up to about 500,000. And I'm asked about this crucial national issue. And as Andrew said, my answer was meh. And this is what I'm trying to instill in people, that, you've got to stop focusing on all our solutions coming from an agency, an organization, a crime syndicate that we know has been lying to us. Look at the depravity. Look at the depth of the debauchery we've seen, the Clinton crime syndicate. And, when we were talking about Donald Trump, lock her up. He goes, you'd be in jail. Everybody cheered during the debates. I was out of my skull when I saw this during the inauguration day. I watched. It was, I enjoyed bread and circuses for a day, because I will still say, no matter what, I am so, so thankful that nasty hag is not our president, Hillary Clinton. So here he is at the inaugural lunch, and he has the Clinton dynasty heads stand up to be publicly acknowledged for their years of public service. Are you freaking kidding me? You promised to have her indicted, and now you are honoring her at your inauguration. Folks, I noticed this during the election when the election cycle when Mitt Romney was going up against Obama in his second term. And do you remember the press dinner? Here they all are in their formal attire, their tuxedos, their wives in their long evening gowns, sipping champagne. The people in this continental landmass, the United States of America, are on their knees. The economy was crippled. People were struggling. And these megalomaniac oligarchs have a unmitigated gall, the audacity to sip champagne for the world to see. I knew right then they were on the same side. Maybe I was a little late figuring it out, but it has been so in our face. That was just really rubbing our nose in the whole situation. And I understand that our co-host, Mark, the one everybody really wants to listen to, is actually here. Am I correct? Or
Mark, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you right now.
Oh, great. Hey, welcome to your show, my friend.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear Suzanne?
I cannot hear Suzanne, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, it's a no-go. So let's try this another time.
Yep. The call-in's just not going to work right now. I'll have to, let me figure, hold on. Try it now, Suzanne.
Check, 1 2 1 2.
Do you hear Suzanne now?
I think I can faintly, but it's very faint.
Okay, well, this isn't going to work.
This is not going to work today, Mark. I appreciate you try calling in, but obviously we don't have the phone system figured out yet.
Gotcha. I'll be home in about 15 minutes. As soon as I get home, I'll log right in.
You got it.
Okay,
we'll talk to you in a bit.
Okay, bye-bye.
So going back to this, we have this whole thing, bread and circuses. And, Jeff, the other thing, I remember when Obama was going to be up for his first re-election, and everybody was literally counting down for 2 years, the day till he'd be out of office. After he was reelected, the same countdown starts again. Folks, we have got to get out of our mindset that things are going to be okay if we just get elected the president with the letter before his title that we like best. It's not going to work out. You know, Jeff, when I was teaching a co-op class on government, it was a homeschool co-op class out here in Park City, and it was during the Obama administration. And when I started talking about it, this little kid, he was only 10 years old, said that Obama was going to be out and everything's going to be great when he's out. And I said, listen, let me give you a little reality check. Things aren't what they seem. In fact, I'm going to teach you about the Constitution. I'm going to teach you about our system of government that you're going to hear in other schools. But then I'm going to tell you a little truth bomb here. None of it is working the way it is supposed to. And I laid out the reasons why. Now, these were younger kids, so I did try to tell them, look, this is how it was planned, but by a system of judicial hearings, of constitutional, of Congress ignoring their mandates, we are not where we were intended to be, which is what they teach the class is the 3 branches of government, the checks and balances, and we have a federal system. I explained to him why I was going to be teaching him the class, why it's not working the way it is, but how we can get it back, and why education is so important. I got a call from the mom demanding to know why her son was so upset. And I explained to her how things were. And she said, well, I really don't like the disrespect that was shown to President Obama. I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, that he was being made fun of. I said, he was being made fun of by your kid, and that and that everything was going to be okay when he was going to be out. So where do you think he heard that? This was my first day of class. I wasn't going to go parties or personalities. I'm about principles. And then she came to it and said, well, he's probably heard his dad, going out on some tears when he's paying his taxes and his bills. So not be that as it may, it was an uncomfortable message for the parents to understand. I think the kid would have enjoyed the class and wanted to keep coming back, but they didn't feel that he was able to handle the truth. But what I'm trying to tell people is I don't think Americans, adults, are able to handle a lot of the truth. A truth bomb that I just released, the 10th Amendment Center just came out by my interpretation of DC versus Heller. I put it on my page. We're not going to cover that on the show today. I want Mark to have a chance to read it. I want you to have a chance to go over it with me. And we'll probably cover that on Friday. But I do also want to make another announcement. I believe we said that we are on SoundCloud. We are on YouTube. We have a radio app that you can go to and listen to our loop of shows. We have the Wasatch Report. I had a live show. Jeff Johnson has the Paradigm Shift. And then we have Case in Point. I will be doing another Case in Point to go into detail with this article and DC versus Heller coming up. Want to also remind you that we have, there's a symposium. I really plan to go to this, and it is called The Revival of Recession and State Nullification. The Abbeville Institute is having this. It is November 10th. It goes from 9 a.m. to 3:30, and it is in Dallas. I have posted the information here before. The speakers include Michael Bolden, who's the executive director of the 10th Amendment Center, Jeff Dice, who's the president from Mises Institute, Donald Livingston, Professor Emeritus, Emory University, and he's the president of the Abbeville Institute, Alan Mendenhall, and Kirkpatrick Sale. Folks, this is going to be awesome. I have been reading actually a book, and it was edited and has an introduction by Donald Livingston. It is Rethinking the American Union for the 21st Century. This is really eye-opening and mind-opening stuff here. People are so conditioned to the fact that we are one nation, indivisible, and that is the cause of all our problems. That is the cause of our dissension, our hatred. Every issue that was intended to be a state issue decided by local politicians, by local communities, has been gobbled up by this one national sovereign entity that's taken on a life of its own, this United States national government. James Madison, who wanted a strong central government, even he said, this is a federal government, not a national government. This message is being reinforced. The mainstream media, conservatives listening to Fox, listening to what's that one with Levin and all these other people. They have their own network, Jeff, CRTV or something like that. They are embracing and glorifying this disaster of a movie by Dinesh D'Souza. Folks, if you want to hear all that stuff, if you want to hear how patriotic it is to say the Pledge of Allegiance, this isn't the show for you. This isn't the network for you. We're about principle. We're about intellectual and moral consistency. That's what you're going to get here. And I think, Jeff, that is why we're getting the response over at this network. You know, we don't get a lot of deep thinkers over at those, and it gets really frustrating. I'll put those shows on if ever there's some sort of terrorist act or something of significance that might be newsworthy that we need to talk about. And I tell you, I have a really, really hard time listening to these folks. Do you spend any time listening to them? I have a hard time with it.
I have pretty much turned off Fox, and I never listen to NBC, CBS, or ABC. They're just useless. They're just propaganda arms of the government. And for that fact, so is Fox. The media is not giving you any news. They're telling you what to think about the news. But, you know, going back to what you were saying earlier, we here take a different tact on things. You're not going to hear the same old story about what's going on and that rah, 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 USA, USA, USA. You're going to hear the founders' principles related to that. So when it comes to standing armies and this never-ending unconstitutional war, we don't support this. We don't support the standing armies because we go back and read what the framers and the founders intended. And what they intended was for there to be the militias that would be called up to federal service to defend the people of these states. But now we have standing armies, which are all over the world, costing us trillions of dollars. I just posted an article the other day, something to the effect that I think it was $4 or $5 trillion since this all started back in 2000 and what was it, 2001. So we're now, what, 17 years into this, and now it's like $5 trillion they've wasted on these wars that are unconstitutional, undeclared, and costing lives and money. So that some corporation get rich. That's really what it comes down to. So, you know, we're not bashing America. We don't hate the system, the federal system is set up. What we do hate is the fact that it's turned into tyranny, and it's nowhere close to what the framers and the founders intended for us to live under. And that's what we base everything we talk about. We don't talk about stuff that we think. We talk about what they think, and we apply it to today's standards.
You know, I was also watching, it was another one. I think there was an article. The guy was on the Laura Ingraham show. I don't want to say I can't stand her. It's not her. It's just what they stand for and how they are considered the voice of conservatism. And I guess that goes to what is conservatism? As we had Tom Mullen on the other day, you know, he said conservatives stand for big government. They stand for their law enforcement. Conservatives love the marijuana laws that are also unconstitutional. And we have our friend Jeff chiming in right now. Levin hurts my ears and Hannity Fox drone on about Trump. No thanks. I totally agree. You know, I told this story. I have about a 40-minute drive when I go down to Park City, and I go work out there, and I'll go drive down to Park City. And when I'll put on Patriot sometimes because it gives me fodder for our shows, and I'll listen to whoever's on. It can be Hannity, it can be Wilkow, whatever. And by the time I go work out, go grocery shopping, and drive back, a couple hours later, I put on the show. It's the same guy talking about the same thing. And again, national issues. Again, I don't want to bash the other guys, but I want to tell you we have an option for you here. There was an article, again, from Laura Ingraham, and it was talking about a guest on her show, and I didn't even keep the window open. It slows down my computer, and the person doesn't matter, but he is calling for, demanding Donald Trump to intervene in Chicago. Well, we've heard rumblings about this before, to intervene in Chicago and make the community safe. Let me read a quote to you from St. George Tucker. I bet most of the people that listen to Laura Ingraham have never heard of St. George Tucker. He was a member of the founding generation who said the following: the Congress of the United States possesses no power to regulate or interfere with the domestic concerns or police of any state. It belongs not to them to establish any rules respecting the rights of property, nor will the Constitution permit the prohibition of arms to the people. Never in the history of these United States has it been more difficult to get a firearm. Thank you, Republican Congress. Thank you, Republican Senate. Thank you, Republican White House President Trump. Folks, I just purchased a firearm, and there's a new question now when you want to buy a sidearm asking if you are addicted to or using any kind of antidepressants, addicted to illegal drugs, or even using or possessing marijuana, even if it is legal in the state in which you live. It is still against federal law to use or possess marijuana for any reason. Jeff, please tell me, we have to look, this is my threshold inquiry, where under Article 1, Section 8 does the general government have the power, the authority to regulate firearms or marijuana? Oh, and yes, at least, thank you, Andrew, at least we have Republican Obamacare. Repeal became repeal and replace. Bringing the American troops home has become defeat ISIS. Folks, this is more of the same. This is why, if you read the very first chapter, Rethinking the American Union for the 21st Century, if you only read that first chapter, the introduction, I mean, Donald Livingston, even he quotes Aristotle, who says there is a point at which something is too big or too small to function. Clearly, we are too big to function. And when everybody demands one man make a city safe thousands of miles from where he resides and lives and supposed to operate, this is too big. We want one individual to solve our problems, the problems of over 350 million people. How can we possibly function? We're not going to address this video today. We have some sound clips. There's a Harvard law professor who is proposing that we get rid of the electoral college system. Actually, many of the leftists want to get rid of it. What he's actually proposing is doing away with the winner-take-all delegate awards. So if you have a majority of votes for one individual, the delegates all go to that candidate. And we'll get more into that, but the means by which he wants to do it is he's arguing the 14th Amendment. Again, this is taking away state sovereignty. We have a lot of people paying homage on both sides to fairness and equality and the constitutional values, while at the same time eschewing them and out disregarding them completely. So we don't have a lot of consistency. Speaking of consistency, we have some developments with the missing girl. I believe her name is Molly Tibbetts. Is that her name? Yes, Molly Tibbetts. Headlines everywhere. We're seeing this all along our news feeds. I don't care what social media, Twitter feed or Twitter, Facebook, we're seeing it. Illegal immigrant arrested in the murder of Molly Tibbetts, was a local farmhand. Now, also an illegal immigrant was the killer of Kate Steinle, he murdered her. And we are seeing now people hearken, strengthen down, double down on their call to build that wall. Again, we should not do what the left is culpable of doing, and that is capitalizing on a tragedy to further our own agenda. Every time there's a school shooting, Jeff, did you open a window? I'm hearing sound in the background here.
No, Mark joined us. He's on his phone. And we're getting a lot of road noise is what you're hearing.
Okay, is he on the phone? Can he hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I am Mark.
Oh, well, look at you.
I am sorry. I had my last cardiac rehab appointment this morning, and it went longer than I had planned. So I apologize for my tardiness. I'll be home shortly and be able to connect via my computer. But I thought, you know what? Let's give it a shot here. Because
why not?
Now I can visibly or visually attest to the fact that I'm safely speeding on the roads in Oklahoma in defiance of tyranny.
Without your seatbelt.
That's right. Hey, wait, look at this. This is my tyranny avoidance device. This is how I turn off the incessant beeping in my vehicle that is mandated by, guess who? The federal government. So I have my tyranny avoidance device here, and I'm rapidly moving home, but I'll be home shortly. And as soon as I get there, Suzanne and Jeff, I'll join right out again. My apologies for being so late. But this is pretty cool, isn't it? I can be in my car safely speeding through Oklahoma.
Well, and
yeah, all you need now is a Bluetooth headset, and you would sound like you're in a studio.
No kidding.
Yes.
I love this. This is great.
Yep. You could do this from your car every day if you had a Bluetooth headset.
Yes, and now that makes more sense because when I'm traveling, we can just, oh, crud, there's a police officer in front of me.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, well, don't get a ticket. Take it easy, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
I'll join you in a couple of minutes.
You know, this raises a really good issue, Jeff. We really have to understand how many of these laws are there to keep us safe, to protect us, as opposed to how many of them are really a source of revenue. Do you think if a police officer were to pull Mark over right now, it's because he's weaving, he's driving dangerously, or did they see an opportunity to collect some revenue because he's going over a stated, arbitrarily decided safe or acceptable speed for a road on a dry and clear day, or because he doesn't have his seatbelt on? Again, federally mandated. At what point do we have the ability to, or the authority for the general government to federally mandate this stuff? So anyway, let me go back to where we were with the Kate Steinle and the Molly Tibbetts issue here. So I'm already seeing this on social media, Jeff. I don't know if you are as well. And that is the call, we're bringing up the calls again to build that wall. Stop the illegal immigration. I discussed this in my article. You can go to it. It's at the 10th Amendment Center. It's called The Constitutional Solution to Immigration. Here's the problem. We have federal benefits, national benefits being given to people that come here, regardless of their status, whether they do it legally or illegally. These benefits cross state lines. So they can come in through a state like California, who may decide they want open immigration. They want open borders. The problem is these people can leave California and now collect their federal benefits anywhere, because the federal government, at the point of a gun, at the end of a gun, threatens us to pay our taxes. And if we do not, we know how that's going to end up. So they can go anywhere now and get the benefit, get the fruit of our labor. And there's no incentive for them to stay in a place like California, other than, again, if they have this sanctuary status. But we're seeing with the calls to have ICE abolished, to abolish our immigration status altogether. Jeff, this sounds crazy, but you know what? I'm okay with abolishing ICE. Let the states handle immigration until we stop making it financially, personally enticing to come over here and live here in contravention to our laws. It's going to continue. It's kind of like saying, well, I notice these Democrats all have a big wall around their house. What we have to understand is it doesn't make any sense to have a wall and seal off your property if you have free cash and free meals, free education, free housing, free medical care. As long as you cross that wall, it's okay. So tell me, Jeff, how beneficial do you think a wall is going to be?
Well, the wall is not going to do anything to keep the people out. Eventually, because they're still getting in. There's walls in different places. They're coming around the walls that's there, but they also have tunnels under the wall in California. So at some point, they're still going to get here because the government makes it worth their while to come here. Free education, free housing, free food stamps, free healthcare, free everything. Well, it's not free. It's free to them, but it costs us something. So as long as there's the incentive for them to come here and get free stuff from us out of our pockets, they're going to keep coming. And a wall is not going to change that. They'll get here anyway.
So this is what I'm asking for our followers. And I don't think it's so much of our followers as what I'm seeing out there is let's be intellectually consistent. Let's be consistent in our principles. Because doubling down on our calls for cracking down on immigration because of this incident, when there's an absence of constitutional authority to do so, makes us just as culpable as the left. What happened after the Parkland shooting? What happened after the Sandy Hook incident? What happened? Okay, the Sandy Hook massacre. What happened after Aurora, Colorado? Every time we have these mass shootings, the focus is always on firearms and the left doubles down on gun control. And then we always attack them and say, why do you people do this? You capitalize on these crises, you take these tragedies and try and use them to further your agenda. Folks, we're doing the same thing. When you're starting to call and demand that we double down on immigration because of this incident, we need to get back to our principles. If we're going to say and tout the Constitution, that we need to get back to the Constitution, fine, let's understand what it means. And according to the Constitution, as ratified, immigration is not naturalization. People like to say Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 grants Congress the power to have a uniform rule of naturalization. And as you have said before, naturalization and immigration are two distinct issues. Andrew, no problem using the imagery to attack the policy of sanctuary states, however. States, not nation. And you know, states, if they want to be sanctuary states, if we have a federal system, if we would acknowledge our federal system, have the right to be sanctuary states. It's monumentally stupid, but make them fiscally responsible for their decisions. You know, when they had the Oroville Dam and all these big dams that were about to burst in California a couple years ago, Jerry Brown, after talking secession, comes groveling back to President Trump with his hands out, saying, hey, we need some money for our infrastructure here. We need to fix these dams for the people of California. They're in imminent peril. Well, this is like having a teenage son and said, you know, I spent all my money on booze and women and I have no money for car insurance. Can you help me with my car insurance? Or my car needs new brakes. Well, you know what? You have the money. You're just spending it in a reckless manner and offering us for you to subsidize your foolishness. So by giving this money, federal money, to California because of their irresponsibility, we are all subsidizing it. Folks, that's the problem with making this continental landmass one united state of America. Jeff, did you want to chime in at all? Or are you talking to Greg? Mark, what's going on here?
As you can see, my phone's in my hand. I'm talking to Greg. I'm talking to Mark. Let's see, who else am I talking to? Talking to Jeff. I'm talking to everybody in the world is texting me and messaging me right this moment while we're on the air. That is the fun of doing this live. You're watching this all. See, there it is.
Well, you know, even if people can't call, we do have a call-in number, 717-467-1736. Even if I'm not able to hear you, sometimes I can call. Jeff will forward your messages to me. Also, do what you're doing now. These Facebook private messages, they get to me. I love them. I can get on there and answer those right away. So that's a lot of fun. I love the live interaction we have. So speaking of consistency in principle, Jeff, I'm being told by people left and right that the House has passed the National Reciprocity Act. Is that correct? So far, is that what we're looking at?
I saw a headline, and I shared a headline this morning that the House passed national reciprocity. And before we go to this story, Suzanne, could we take a quick break? Because Mark wants to connect and have a seamless transition to him coming in. Could we take a short break here and then come back?
Sure, why not?
Okay. All right. This is the Cerberus Radio Network, and I'm Jeff Johnson, and she's Suzanne Sherman. And in a minute, it'll be he's Mark and she's Suzanne. And oh well, we're having fun today, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Finally. Good night.
Paul, are these two men in the middle insufficiently conservative for you?
Well, I think that the problem is nobody's to define what being conservative means. And I think that is our problem. Conservative means we have smaller government and more liberty. And yet, if you ask what have we done, I think we've lost our way completely. Our rhetoric is still pretty good. But when we get in charge, we expand the government. You talk about Dodd-Frank, but we gave Sarbanes-Oxley. We gave debts as well, you know, when we're in charge. So if it means limited government, you have to ask a basic question: what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, had a revolution, wrote a constitution. And they said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty. It's not to run a welfare state and not to be the policeman of the world. And so if you're going to conservative, how can you be conservative and cut food stamps, but you won't cut spending overseas? There's not a nickel or penny that anybody will cut on the conservative side overseas spending, and we don't have the money. They're willing to start more wars. So I say if you're conservative, you want small government across the board, especially in personal liberty. What's wrong with having the government out of our personal lives? So this is what we have to decide: what conservative means, what limited government means. And I have a simple suggestion. We have a pretty good guide, and if we follow the Constitution, government would be very small, and we would all be devoted conservatives.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's been an exciting show today. Radio without a net, live radio. We've got all sorts of fun stuff going on here. Mark Kreslins has decided to roll on into the studio. Good morning, sunshine. I think you are actually sound asleep.
I have absolutely no defense, so I'm not even going to attempt one. I clearly misjudged what a last visit meant. And my apologies to you, to Jeff, to the audience. And I'm here now. I'm Mark, she's Suzanne, and we are here to revolutionize radio. And as you all know, there's a lot of need for revolutionizing radio. Suzanne, I missed the first part of the show because I was in transit, though we did get close to actually making it work. And for all those who were following when I did connect there for a moment, I was able to avoid the tyrannical police department and took a right-hand turn, and he went left, and I breathed a sigh of relief because you never know, I may actually be violating some law without my seatbelt on, and there would be just another $25 I get to donate against my will to the local government. So and this is the kind of talk and discussion we want to continue to have. We think this is why our numbers continue to spike, because we're unafraid here. We will gore sacred cows, because you know what sacred cows can do? They can actually make you a slave. You know, I put up a post last night, Suzanne, on my Facebook page. I said, how do you spell freedom in these United States today? You spell it S-L-A-V-E-R-Y, slavery. Folks, we are not free. Get that now. There's a kind of relative freedom that we still experience. Yes, we're not in North Korea, and we don't, have to manage our electric during the day so we can have food and warmth at night. We don't live in China where you would be forced into a two-child policy and be persecuted as a Christian. So there's a kind of relative freedom we have when compared to other countries around the globe. But we don't have the freedom that they were dying for over there on Brandywine and Boston and Lexington and Concord and Yorktown and New York. And we don't have that kind of freedom. We are totally oppressed. And again, now we laugh about my little event this morning and totally legitimately with regards to the Edmond police being in front of me. But there's a certain also macabre reality to that, isn't there? If he had looked at his rearview mirror and detected that I did not have my seatbelt on, well, guess what? He could have thrown the lights on. I'd have gotten pulled over and I'd have gotten fined $25 because I don't comply with their stupid laws. I was safely speeding up 35 trying to get here to make the last half of the show. Emphasize the word safely. I was going 80 miles an hour in a 70-mile zone. Now, if you're listening, and I suppose, I don't know if that would be, Suzanne, you're the lawyer. You have to tell me if that's prima facie evidence that I committed a crime and could be taken into court on arrears because I'm saying that. But I safely went 80 miles an hour up the road because I wanted to talk to Suzanne and to Jeff and to you guys. But emphasize the word safely. You know, this is the great. This is why we're here, folks. We're here to serve you. By the way, Suzanne, hats off yesterday on your K-Talk interview. That was, if you get a chance, folks, you need to download those 2 hours. Some of the best 2 hours you'll hear in radio. Suzanne just totally knocked it out of the park, dealing with complex issues. She won a fan from the New American. And you and I had our own little text back and forth. I won't go into it here in the air. But, you know, and why? Why was Suzanne so effective yesterday? Because she tells the truth. She's unafraid, and we're unafraid here at Cerberus Radio Network to tell the truth. Because as Jesus has told us all, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, if you're afraid of the truth, then we've got nothing for you. Go tune in Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and all those guys, and they'll continue.
At the Democrats in your car. Yell at the Democrats, and
yeah, exactly.
My life would be so great without you, or if you're on the other side. When Trump's gone, my life is going to be good. I was talking before you came on, Mark, during the Obama administration, before the 2014 elections or the 2012 re-election cycle. There was a countdown till he left office. And then guess what? He lost. And these morons started the same old countdown again, because by golly, this time it's going to be different. I want to address your comments.
And Suzanne, hold on. I have to break in and say something because, and Levin is always talking to you, Kreslins, because he's always going, "You big dummy."
You big dummy.
I'm done. I'll let you get back to the serious stuff.
Kreslins, you big dummy.
I wanted to talk about your comment, relative freedom. Did the founders, when they signed that Declaration of Independence, was their goal, we want to be freer someday than some future communist country? We want to be better than, those other places. No, they wanted to be free. They wanted their rights as Englishmen. It wasn't relative safety. It wasn't relative freedom. Look at what we have now. And I've told this story before. When I was going on that journey back east, we're in Wyoming, going through Medicine Bow National Forest, pardon my French, and we're on this stretch of highway on Interstate 80, and it's beautiful. You've got the mountains. You can see elk up there on the ridges. And then close by, you see all the cattle. They're eating. It is beautiful. Life is good. They're ignoring the barbed wire fence. Someday, that truck's going to show up, and life's going to stop being so wonderful. If we're so accustomed to our enslavement. You said SLAVERY Gosh, that was funny. Okay. We're so accustomed to our enslavement, our relative freedom. We are unaware, or when we see that vehicle in our rear view mirror, we keep looking. First thing we do is look at our speedometer. We know we're not driving 100 miles down that road, but we want to check to make sure that we don't get pulled over. Those cattle are unaware They'll wake up when that truck shows up, just like we do. You have a little grandbaby. Imagine now, what did he get as part of his birth? His little ritual being born, his tax ID number, his social security number. Would his mama, and I know Jennifer, and I'm betting the answer is no. How would she feel if some federal government employee walked in with a hole puncher and a tag with the number on to put on baby Isaac's ear? She'd punch him in the face. Jennifer's a sweet girl, but she ain't going to do that.
That's right. You are right on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the great problem. And this is, Suzanne, just yesterday on the K-Talk interview, as I was listening, and it was just riveting. It was very, very good. Even the callers, your co-hosts there, I think they actually think they're free, and that what they don't realize is that it's an illusion. Back in the old days, we talked about the bovine brigade, and perhaps it's time to bring the bovine brigade back alive, because
30-06 right here, bovine 30-06. Andrew, bovine 1787 or 1777. I think he's 1787 is listening too.
yes, I see some, and I think you don't really begin to fix anything until you're willing to admit your present condition. And this is why what we're doing here is so important to you folks. It's not, obviously we both enjoy radio. Jeff enjoys radio. The other hosts on the network enjoy doing this. But we're not just doing it to do it. We actually are trying to bring about change. And it begins with each one of you listening, both by sharing our show here with other people, getting more involved in the other shows on the network. This is actually how we grow a community. And dare I say, this is actually how we organize. It's so funny. The very tools, Suzanne, that are at our disposal, people like Rush Limbaugh and others kind of mock those. The whole Cloward and Piven strategy. Right? How many times have we heard, oh, they're just a bunch of communists, and the Democrats are using the Cloward and Piven strategy. Well, aren't they actually pretty smart? Look at how successful they are. We hear stuff like that. Well, Rush Limbaugh told us something bad about Cloward and Piven and Rules for Radicals. We better not read that book. I've read that book, and folks, you need to read that book so that we can organize, so that we can bring about an end to this tyranny that is going on. And so, folks, your freedom is relative to when the federal government, your state government, your county government, your local government decides you're no longer free. When a group of megalomaniacs who raise their hands and take a supposed oath that they plan to keep, when they get in the room and they're up on a dais and they've got their chairs and they're sitting back and listening to the testimony and the hearing from the professionals, when they hear all that and then they decide what they're going to do, that takes your liberty from you. They can take it from you by a sheer, let's say it's a 7-person city council. A 4-person majority can take your property, can take your liberty, and in extreme situations, if you don't comply with those two taken, they'll take your life. This is the annual reminder of what government will do unaccountable. We remember Ruby Ridge.
That was 26 years ago yesterday, I believe.
Yes, yesterday. And his wife was shot today in the head, holding a baby, by a federal agent who was enforcing federal gun laws because he was, in theory, sawing off shotguns. Well, okay, all you Second Amendment people who believe the Second Amendment gives you a right, it doesn't. It defends an unalienable right. It stops the federal government from infringing on them. If the supposed sacred federal government that emanates from the Constitution and is divine in origin was so glorious as people think that it is, why wouldn't they be fulfilling and following the Second Amendment, which restricts them from infringing on Randall Weaver's ability to saw off a shotgun barrel? and his wife wouldn't have a bullet in his head. She was shot by an FBI agent through the head. You know, I decided, Suzanne, to do a little, when you're bored, you know, sometimes you probably do the same thing. Thoughts just kind of pop into your head and you decide to go on a Google chase for it. Well, I typed in how many federal agencies are there. And of course, you really can't know. Here's an interesting report from the APA, which is a government body. Here's a quote from their annual report related to how many agencies are out there. It says, since what constitutes an agency under the APA is governed on a case-by-case basis through litigation, there is no authoritative list of government agencies. Do you get that? The government itself is saying, we don't know how big we are. We don't know. And folks, I used to work in the federal government. I can assure you there is no way anybody can authoritatively say how many federal agencies there are, how many federal programs that are funded, how many sub-agencies and departments there are. Folks, these are the sacred cows we're going to gore. You need to know that any one of those federal agencies and federal departments, sub-departments can kill you, can take your property, can take your liberty from you. Folks, I don't care what you think about the Constitution. Whatever it is, you know, we've discussed the Constitution many, many times on this program, and we will continue to discuss it.
A sacred parchment.
Yeah, it's it. Whatever grew out of it, de facto, this is what grew out of it. You can de jure all you want. You can say, oh, well, it's not supposed to. You can argue that and keep on arguing that while it continues to metastasize and grow.
I am so sick to death of we failed the Constitution. It's a perfect document. It came from God. It's man that failed it. Folks, this is the vehicle through which the government has been allowed to completely encapsulate us in this system. You know, like you said, where do they get the authority to tell us what kind of light bulbs we can have? How much water can go through our bathroom fixtures, our toilets? What kind of piping we can have in the irrigation ditch in my creek here in the middle of nowhere? Well, we want to make your community better. Then get out of it. Just mind your own business. Get out, and don't come back.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this is at all levels. We have adopted this mentality that government is our somebody sent me a picture of this devastating pollution and algae and issue going on in Florida right now. And the meme, this plea for help ends with, the United States is our parent. Our parent, Mark, we will never have a human relationship that we are more intimately connected with biologically, I'm talking about, than our parents. And they are trying to interject the role of the United States government, baby killers, tax collectors, warmongers around this world. They are our parent. No. If the United States is my parent, I want to be an orphan right now.
Yeah, I'm with you, Suzanne. I think, and I don't, it's almost a psychosis or a neurosis or something that people will defend this, what is clearly an evil government to the end. And it's kind of this abused spouse syndrome we've talked about before. I really think there's a Stockholm syndrome thing going on or something. But man, it is hard to pry people away from what they hold very cherished in they've been trained to hold very cherished in their lives. And right now you got the flag, you got the national anthem, you got George Washington, you got Washington, D.C., you got all the monuments, you got everything that just continues to prop up this hyper devotion to this thing. When in reality, what needs to happen, as we talked about before, you need to line up about 1,000 bulldozers on 16th Avenue down there in Washington, D.C. and start pushing east right into the Chesapeake and don't stop until every one of those buildings is pushed into the Chesapeake. That's really what needs to happen. This thing needs to end, folks. It needs to be reset. This is not a good government. This is an evil, in an odd kind of way, Suzanne. I don't know if you got into this at all at the beginning of the program. I'm watching this whole Trump thing with fascination. Not because I'm
like a train wreck.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a defender of Donald Trump, but it does show something. It shows just how evil this system is.
Yes.
Because if there is not a gun that is giving off smoke, they will create one. This is now again, it's so hard for me because I have to put Trump in there, but there's a certain reality to this that they are trying to bring down a president on something he had nothing to do with.
Exactly.
This is why, if we're a republic, we are a banana republic. There is no such thing in this country as equal justice. Nothing remotely near it. I heard this morning, I happened to be listening on the way into my doctor's appointment, that this stuff with Manafort comes from 2004 or 5, somewhere around there. And
boy, that's a clear and present danger. Huh?
Exactly. And apparently prosecutors were aware of this back then and just chose not to prosecute it back then. Folks, we all see this. Remember the image of Lady Liberty, and she's standing there with the balanced scales of justice. Folks, you do that, and the full weight of the government will come down on you. I don't know Michael Flynn. I remember he was going to be the vice presidential candidate possibility, and I took after him pretty hard. But the bottom line is, because they went after him, the guy's bankrupt.
Right.
Suzanne, if they went after you, you don't possibly have the resources to defend yourself. They will destroy you. Folks, is this the kind of government you want? If you think the Constitution is going to protect Suzanne Sherman when they come after her, you got another think of coming.
I tell you what, Mark, we talked about this on your show when I first was going on with your wonderful son, Trent, talking about the American Community Survey. And what they first tell you is it's required under federal statute, no constitutional authority, but they justify it with a federal statute. Now they have the authority to determine population for purposes of representation in the House of Representatives. We know that. They want to know what kind of toilets, how do you heat your house, who stayed at your house for more than 3 days. That's a long weekend. The general government wants to know, can you dress yourself? We're down to 3 minutes, but I'm going to wrap this up with this. They want to know this. And if you don't tell them, if you don't send in this information, they're going to call you. They'll send you a reminder, then they're going to call you. If that doesn't work, they will send somebody to knock at your front door to assist you. Can you please define assist? And if that isn't a thinly veiled, that's not even thinly veiled, that is a threat. We are going to come, and I told myself, folks, this might be my Ruby Ridge out here. I'm not answering this question, and you're not taking me with you. This is my line in the sand. My kids are old enough. Kids are old enough, and I'm not going to stand for this. This is not acceptable. I want people to know you've got to start changing your way you think about government, the way authority works. Every single law, no matter how ridiculous, is ostensibly enforced at gunpoint. The death penalty for a lemonade stand. I want to share with you really quickly a comment because I was a little bit a little nervous how this was going to go over. But Mark, I have an article that came out with the 10th Amendment Center getting the Second Amendment wrong. I called it How Scalia Botched the Second Amendment in Heller. And, this is a sacred cow, folks. This is the originalist, the textualist, the conservative darling, the justice we want to replace. Here's the commentary from somebody that shared it, somebody I really respect, because I thought, boy, they're going to come down on me hard. Suzanne Sherman has written one of the most lucid, brief discussions on the Second Amendment as you are likely to find anywhere in the context of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision as to the District of Columbia versus Heller. To get the most out of it, you ought to read Heller at first and have a copy nearby. Suzanne explains why Heller was a right result, bad law case. Scalia, and then go in there. That's on the Second Amendment, and it is on the 10th Amendment page. We are going to be posting it. I will let you wrap up the show, Mark. We're hoping to be back on Friday morning at the same time, same bat channel, Cerberus Radio Network.
Folks, we're glad you joined us. I am Mark. She is Suzanne. We'll see you Friday.